Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the AnandTech podcast. I'm your host Ian Cuttress, and this is podcast number 39. We're still here speaking smartphones. Joining me is Joshua Ho, our senior smartphone editor.
Hey guys.
And a new face on the podcast as well, Matt Humrick, our new smartphone editor.
Hello.
Now, we just did our first half of the podcast on the iPhone launch. Joshua was there in a hall full of 7,000 people listening to Tim Cook explain the new iPhone.
And Sia. Just a random concert at the end.
Oh, don't worry. I've been to Samsung events in London where they had will.i.am do a 2-hour set after the event. So the fact that Apple had Sia and it was just one song, I think you got the better end of the deal there.
Yeah, I think so. I don't watch the live stream because I'm too busy. Also the internet's not going to work for that in the hall. But I'm pretty sure they don't show the audience when this concert happens, because if you were to actually look, there would be a whole wave of press trying to get up, pack, and trying to get out of the room as quickly as possible to go to the demo area, get the hands on it.
I am not surprised. But we covered the iPhone event, and
right.
There were a few more events that happened throughout the week and over the past month that we also want to cover. Including having a look at some of the recent news that's also come to the attention, especially stuff that started exploding and creating fires, which is a nice segue into saying, Josh, you reviewed the Samsung Galaxy Note7. Did yours blow up?
Yes. So I don't know if it's blown up, because I left it... For events in San Francisco, I come up to... my parents' house in Emeryville, and usually I leave all the review units in San Jose. So maybe the house is burned down, maybe it hasn't. I guess there's only one way to find out. Because I was actually genuinely worried that I would come home and the house would be leveled. So I put it in the middle of a glass stove where on top there's a metal fume hood and to the sides it's all granite. So unless sparks fly at a 45-degree angle away from the phone, hopefully the house doesn't burn down if it sets on fire.
Don't worry, I was sitting next to Sasha Sagan from PC Mag, I think, during a ZTE briefing at IFA, and he had his on the desk, and I had one eye on the guy presenting and the other eye on his Note 7. I asked him afterwards whether he was going to trade it in, and he hadn't decided yet.
I don't know what to do for review units. I should probably contact Samsung to figure out. But yeah, man, reviewing that phone was I would say it's sort of like a return to normalcy, but at the same time, it's sort of like once you right. So here's sort of the problem I've been dealing with is increasingly I've discovered that a week is really not enough to do a proper great review that I want to do, right? But at the same time, it's what the readers want. It's also, it pretty much, you have to be timely.
You also, most of the time when a smartphone arrives ahead of launch, you're lucky to get a week.
Right, so in this case I got exactly 6 days. It showed up, I want to say, actually it may not even be a full 6 days. I got it around, I want to say 10, 11 a.m., on August 10th, if I remember correctly, and the embargo was something like 9 a.m. Eastern Time on the 16th. Conveniently, August 10th was my original jury duty date, and I totally forgot about it, but that's a different story for a different time.
Well, so with jury duty aside, when you test a smartphone, battery tests take at least 3 days when you're on the money. Camera testing also means you have to retest a bunch of phones, so you have the exact same images, and that's
it's like a day, at least a day, optimistically.
And that's when you're focused on the ball and you don't have anything else that needs to be done. I mean...
Right. Nothing else is coming up. Nothing is wrong with the phone. That's if you're really lucky, because usually something isn't going to align and sort of, then you have to do fix-ups.
I mean, just for clarification here, Josh is still in school and currently we're in, the summer break, so he has this time, other things permitting, he has this time. Normally, if a release happens, say January, then you have to fit it in all between the schoolwork. All between your
Right,
65
exactly.
hours of
So-
schoolwork a week.
So last quarter, I had like circuits labs, and those were like once every 3 weeks. And so there are only 3 labs, and you're basically entirely graded on the content of those labs. And so if you don't finish the lab, you don't get everything done, you don't turn it in, then you basically just failed the class. So, and then like those labs take like 20 hours of straight work. Even after you finish all the actual data collection, which itself is probably on the order of 20 hours. And this is a 1-unit class, which means 1 hour a week. That's what they claim it is. It totally isn't. It's a complete lie.
So, excuses aside as to why you thought
Yes, exactly.
Note 7.
Right.
Give us a breakdown of what you thought.
So I think it's a good phone overall, right? I get the sense that a lot of people think that I hate this phone. That's not true. I don't really hate it. What I do think is that I think Samsung didn't do enough to prepare the Note 7 for sort of the late season competition, right? Because at launch and when the review dropped, it was the best phablet you could buy, bar none. But we've already had one major launch, right? The iPhone 7 Plus. That's a major competitor, and is it better? Is it right? It's questionable. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see. And then also, there's going to be, I don't know, so this is speculation. I guess the Pixel or Nexus phones, whatever they're going to be called, right? That's probably going to compete with the Note 7. And then also the V20. The V20 just showed up. And that's really what I'm worried about. As far as the buyer, if you're going to buy this season, do you buy the Note 7 or do you wait for something else?
So Apple being its own sort of device and ecosystem, every one of the major phablet players typically using Snapdragon 820.
But that's not even true either, right? We're going to get Snapdragon 821 later, and
yeah.
And in the US, right? So the 821, it's a small number jump, but actually there's a lot of, like CPU errata fixes. There's more optimization. It's not something that you can just write off easily. There are real benefits to it.
The first device with the 821 is going to be the Zenfone 3 Deluxe, which is a 6.8-inch device. So that may be slightly out of...
Yeah, I don't think that's quite the same thing then. It's not in the same competition, at least.
I will say that when I spoke to Qualcomm at IFA, they told me that the Snapdragon 820 was an SoC primarily designed for virtual reality.
Okay.
So, just to put that out there.
Right, and there's the whole DayDream thing that's coming up. So, does it support DayDream? I don't think it's DayDream compatible.
What's DayDream for those?
Google DayDream is Google's VR initiative. It uses Android and your smartphone, and I guess like headsets, sort of like cardboard but better, to give you an immersive experience. Like something better than cardboard, but not like HTC Vive.
Isn't that just Gear VR?
Yeah, it's kind of like Gear VR, but with the support of Google. So, like you can actually use YouTube and stuff.
Oh, okay. So it's an ecosystem, a set of APIs, a platform.
Right. And also you're not limited to Samsung phones, right? Like every Android OEM is going to be making this.
I did see a lot of VR headsets at IFA, either standalone ones or ones that you just stick in a smartphone, so that makes sense.
Right.
But anyway, back to Note 7. So I just want to give a spec rundown for anybody who hasn't seen the review. There's going to be 2 separate devices. One's going to have Qualcomm Snapdragon 820, that's for mainly the US, and then the rest of the world is going to have the Exynos 8890, that's going to have Samsung's custom M1 or Mongoose cores. Different GPUs, the Snapdragon version is going to have Adreno 530, the Exynos is going to have the super high-end Mali T880 with, that's a 12 cluster design. Note 7 is going to have 4GB of LPDDR4, 64GB of UFS 2 storage. It's a 5.7-inch device at 1440p. We have a Sony IMX260 rear 12-megapixel camera with OIS, 1.4 micron pixels. It's going to have a 5-megapixel front camera, 3500 milliamp hour battery, 2x2 AC, USB Type-C, standard stuff you'd expect on a high-end smartphone.
Yeah, it has all the bells and whistles.
Android 6? Why not Android 7? Why not Nougat?
I mean, it just wasn't ready, right? It launched before, pretty much, if it shows up right as the OS comes out to consumers, then it's already too late, right? You're gonna have to wait a while for the update to happen, to be developed internally, because Samsung has to do their own work on it.
Is that with Samsung Knox and everything else?
Right, exactly, to integrate all these features.
Yeah. And then on top of that, you're going to have carrier-specific integration.
Right, exactly. They want to do their own validation that may or may not catch anything, add their own bloatware, add their own support software that, may or may not be any value, that kind of thing.
So I encourage anybody who's interested in the Note 7 to go read Josh's Note 7 review. But I do want to come strictly onto this battery issue, because for those people who haven't been reading recently, Samsung's Note 7 has experienced, 35 separate fires due to Note 7 phones?
That was reported cases by Samsung that they know of.
35 out of how many? 2 million?
I don't know. It's a big number. So it's a small incidence rate, but it's enough to matter. So.
And so what they said is, they initially said, we're looking into this, and then within 6 hours they instituted a full global recall.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, this is a big deal.
Which is interesting actually, because a couple of companies at IFA asked me and said, how do you think Samsung handled the recall? And I think to go from 6 hours to saying we acknowledge to full global recall, it is a pretty swift decision.
Yeah, that's a pretty good turnaround time. I think really they made the right call, right? Because if your phone is known for burning people's houses down, that's a pretty
yeah,
that's really a dark mark on the reputation of a company. And sort of Samsung, this stuff is already in the wild, right? The mistake has already been made. You can't undo what's been done.
I heard that this is going to cost Samsung about 900 million to $1 billion US, and as the issue was happening and resolving, the stock price caused a value of Samsung to drop 7 billion. But
right.
Besides all that, the issue stems from the, is it lithium-ion or lithium polymer battery?
Right, it's LiPo batteries.
Yeah, so...
There's probably some kind of internal short that's happening. I'm not sure of the exact reasons, but it's happening.
So are they recalling all Note 7s or just, some in a specific
it's
serial
all,
number range?
Right now it's all. It's not specific serial numbers.
So we're going to see a lot of pre-owned Note 7s on the market.
Right, exactly.
They are reaching out to people to say, hey, we know that you've bought one. Come and get it fixed. Come into our program. But just to clarify, lithium-ion and lithium and polymer batteries are actually difficult things to charge. Because of the way the internal battery chemistry works, if you charge too quickly, you could end up plating one of the electrodes, or you reduce capacity, or you reduce life cyclability. There's a great video on YouTube by Dave from LiveBlog about charging lithium polymer and lithium ion batteries and what's the right way to do it and how they do it physically and to make sure that they have the maximum length of battery life and recyclability. But as I understand, most of the fires were happening either during charging or, just as it was quietly discharging, not attached to anything. As you were saying, there could be a short somewhere.
But charging exacerbates the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's more likely to happen if you're charging it. Because that's where
charging.
most of the cases, right? Most of the cases are, the thing was charging, and I just dropped the phone, and it got really hot. And then the fire starts. The fire rises.
We didn't start the fire? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so global recall, that means you can't buy it right now? Is that right?
Supposedly yes, but it's not like a formal recall, so it's not like illegal for a retailer to sell you the phone.
Right. but we expect that when they come back onto the market, they will be fixed.
Right.
But yeah, so the Note 7 continues this fascination with curved displays.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not a fan.
Matt, have you experienced with curved displays?
Yeah, I mean, I think they look cool. They don't serve any functional purpose. Even on the edge displays, where you can swipe in from the edge with their different bars and things. I mean, those are useful, but you don't need an edge display for those. And they work just fine on a flat display.
I mean, do you have issues with sort of like the extra reflections and sort of weird viewing angle issues? Because that's really what gets me. That and like you can't really use a good screen protector for it.
Yeah, the screen protector I could see as a definite issue. For me, I mean, yes, I do notice some of the optical distortions, but I just quickly adapt and I just ignore it. Like it just doesn't bother me.
Right.
Mainly because when I'm looking at it straight on. If I'm tilting the phone or something, that's when you're going to really notice it. So I could see it bothering some people. For me personally, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
I've never really used a curved display phone. I mean, aside from at a show and then deciding this is really weird. Why would I want this? I did see at IFA this week the new Nubia Z11, which uses what they call a bezel-less display, and I mean, I took pictures with my camera, and it doesn't really do it justice because it feels bezel-less. It looks bezel-less. I mean, you're looking at less than 0.1 millimeter bezel. It's crazy.
So in that case, is the display still flat?
That's the thing. I don't think it is. I think it is a slight curve, but it's a curve enough to just adjust so that it looks flat still.
Okay, so is it an OLED display?
I don't know. I didn't ask. I don't think it is. I literally spent 5 minutes with it going, ooh, look at the bezels. I do actually have a video to upload of the guy speaking about it to me, assuming the audio worked because it was in a massive hall, so couldn't hear anything.
I mean, the curved displays do seem to be popular. I mean, my own anecdotal evidence of just as I'm out in the world looking at what kind of phones people are using, you see a lot of Samsung phones, and almost all of them that I see are curved display models.
Is that just people buying the most premium model, though?
Yeah.
No, I think a lot of people like it. Okay, so the Z11 is LCD.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I have this sort of weird, unconfirmable theory that some people just buy the most premium device regardless because they want just the best smartphone. And if
they want the best.
If they're a Samsung fan, they'll buy the most expensive Samsung one. If they're an iPhone fan, they buy the most expensive iPhone. And we know people who buy the most expensive iPhone every time they come out. So, is that just why the curved displays are selling well?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's different.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, it's different, and also a lot of people are like, ooh, that looks pretty. So, like, really, it's design, I think, right? It's like a really cool design, and there's nothing wrong with, liking that.
We'll see. Yeah, that's pretty much all we had down to speak about, the Note 7 review.
I think so. I mean, there was obviously like stuff like, I think the difference between the Exynos and Snapdragon variants, that's something that they have to fix because there's like user experience impacts, right? Like,
right.
I've documented the Snapdragon 820 variant it stutters where places that it shouldn't, right? I don't think I've actually seen the V20 stutter like this, or the HTC 10, or, like the OnePlus 3, but I don't have a ton of experience with it, so maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does stutter, but I just don't know about it.
Is that just a problem of when you're dual sourcing SoCs, you end up having to write two code bases?
I think that may be part of it, but, like it's on Samsung to sort of make sure these things don't happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, there are a lot of people who say, okay, well, I don't see it, but if people, if you're used to an iPhone, or if you're used to like Windows Phone 7 where things were perfectly smooth, you're gonna notice, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, there's also, like, a lot of people who are saying, okay, well, why is there all this design criticism? First of all, like, the first thing is that I don't actually care about design that much, right? But
wait, you're talking about hardware design?
Sort of like industrial design, right?
Yeah.
But this was something that Samsung, like, really pushed. We spent, like, multiple slides in the presentation before launch going over, this is a symmetrical design. We've really focused on design for this phone. Like, the works. And then I actually get the phone and I start looking closely and I'm like, okay, well, like, stuff just doesn't really look like it's, like, there are things that clearly aren't symmetrical, right? And sort of like things are not necessarily lined up. And so it's like, if you're going to go through all the effort of talking about it, like, maybe you should really deliver on that promise.
So what, did it feel a bit rushed, or?
Yeah, it sort of felt like, they were sort of marketing something that they didn't necessarily have. And then, like, the LG V20, if you look at sort of like the details, it's actually in a lot of ways better than the Note 7 when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Like, things are actually lined up. There's no, like, weird asymmetries. And LG doesn't advertise design, right? They're just like, okay, this phone, it's aluminum, feels great, looks great, something, right? But it's like one slide and then they just skip right through it. And they move on to, like, this has the best sound.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll get to the LG V20 in a little bit.
Right.
In our list of topics to discuss, you and I were both at the launch for Honor 8.
Yes.
In San Francisco. This was right in the middle of IFA. Huawei's budget.
IDF?
IDF.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I had too many shows in such short time. But yeah, so Honor is Huawei's sort of low to mid-range.
It's for the brand. It's for the brave.
It's
for the young.
It's for the millennials, yeah.
Yes, it's for the young and the young at heart.
Right, okay, so to put this in perspective, when Apple launch a device, they invite Sia onto the stage. When Samsung launch a device, they invite will.i.am to do a 2-hour set after the event. Honor invite David Beckham's son, Brooklyn Beckham, who is 17, to come on stage and essentially tell people how good the camera is and then give him a skateboard. Because
Yeah, I really... look, I think there may be, like, a cultural barrier here, but I find it really hard not to laugh when I see this stuff. You don't see it in the live blog necessarily, because we're just not gonna subject other people to it, but it's just hilarious for us to see it.
Well, don't get me wrong. I'm not blasting on Brooklyn Beckham, because obviously they're paying him a fair amount of money just to stand on stage and accept a skateboard. But the Honor brand has been that sort of low range millennial type. Their whole shtick is low cost, reasonable performance. But what they were launching at the event in San Francisco was a sort of a super mid-high range phone. They're completely encroaching onto Huawei's core business with this device, the Honor 8.
Yeah, I think they're doing kind of a brand shift where, like you said, initially it was meant to be the lower cost option to Huawei's main devices, and now they're sort of shifting it as not necessarily lower cost, but targeted to a different demographic, the younger generation.
The younger generation who has money.
I think they keep saying that, but, like, to me it comes off as like, hello fellow kids.
Yes.
I too listen to Rock Band. What are you doing today? Let's go skateboard sometime later this day after school.
It does make you wonder just what is the average age of the marketing team coming up with this. But I mean,
we're just poking fun here, right? I don't think Honor is necessarily a bad thing, but it's just really funny to see the launch events sometimes.
Hey,
I think in Las Vegas at CES, like, they had people on hoverboards and they were like dancing. Like, that was how they started.
And for this event, after they launched the device, everybody goes to the back to play with the devices, and maybe there's some like drinks or burgers. This time they just had jars filled with sweets. It's the sort of things that the public don't see at these press events is interesting. But, so this device, the Honor 8 that they launched, it's a reasonably well-spec'd phone. I mean,
it's actually pretty good hardware.
It's basically the Huawei P9 in a different chassis.
Yeah. It's got a slightly lower resolution screen, I think.
Does
yes.
it? I don't...
Yeah.
It's a 5.2-inch 1080p.
So we've got a 5.2-inch 1080p. It's got Kirin 950, which is quad ARM Cortex-A72s and quad ARM Cortex-A53s. Mali TA80 MP4. So this is the SoC that Andre said at the beginning of the year was actually perhaps the best performing, most efficient SoC out of all the major players.
Yeah, actually, I think it may even beat the Apple A9.
Yeah. Credit to HiSilicon and Huawei's in-house silicon team for creating a really nice SoC, but here it is in the Honor 8. As we mentioned, it's got, dual rear cameras. So the idea is that one of them is color, the other is black and white. Both of them are dual 12 megapixel. But the idea is that with the black and white one, you can do contrast focusing, but you can also do funky things like bokeh and more professional style photography.
I think the big thing there is like sensitivity, right? Right.
Yeah,
better low light.
I haven't used the Honor 8 yet, but I've used the P9 camera quite a bit, and in normal mode, it's capturing light with both cameras and then combining it post-processing to try and improve image quality. The other thing you can do is, I forget what they call it now, but you can enable another mode where it uses the black and white camera to make a depth map, and then you can adjust the not the focus, but you can shift
the
bokeh after you've taken the picture.
Well, currently my wife is using my sample right now, and we were in Berlin for a few days post IFA, and I was actually using it a fair bit, and it is kind of handy to do it post, because you can obviously take a picture as it is, and then because it stores all the image data with the picture, you can go into the gallery later and adjust as you feel necessary, and then apply Instagram filters or whatever you want to.
So the focus feature, is it actually like... My big issue with the M8 was that, first of all, the effect looks really fake, and also it couldn't even like separate things properly. Like the depth map was not high enough resolution. Is that fixed with the Honor 8?
I don't know, because I don't have experience of the original issue.
I guess like the P9 as well, if you have experience there, Matt.
The P9 worked quite well. I didn't notice any issues.
And chances are it's the same software, just copied over.
Right.
Yeah, I mean the hardware looks to be the same, so...
Speaking of software, Emotion UI.
EMUI.
Yes.
What emotion does it invoke in you, Josh?
Actually, so I think I would be okay with it if it just didn't break so many core, like, how does Android work behaviors.
For me, the emotions are many emotions are 4 letters and unsuitable for broadcast.
Okay.
This is so.
I guess that's one way of putting it.
So I've been using the Mate 8 for most of the year. And
how do you like the Mategory?
It's just small things like being able to. So if you have your Gmail as your main email app, in a notifications bar, because the Gmail text is black and the notification pull-down menu is black, unless you're on a pure white background, you can't read your emails.
Oh,
you
nice.
can't, just a quick glance of who's emailed you and what the topics are. Changing the background can be an issue. It is very proactive in kicking out apps from memory, so you also have to be proactive about which ones you keep in memory.
Yes, I've noticed that too. Syncing breaks very often if you don't manage it yourself. I think this is because they expect every app developer to be like Chinese app developers that like, cause I know WeChat and most of these applications, they just, like, if you don't do something at the system level, they just run wake lock nonstop and destroy your battery.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a nice feature, but it does require some extra monitoring and management. So if you have, say, an app that requires it to be on all the time in order for you to get notifications, you have to go and manually select it to be not kicked out of memory. The Mate 8 itself actually has a very high default memory usage, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure how it is on the Honor 8. EMUI tries to emulate iOS a lot. So one of the things that I like about my usage of Android is the fact that if I have an app that I use a lot, I need the ability to be able to put the app on every single home screen. So in exactly the same place, so it's always there where I need it. Can't do that with the EMUI. You only get one
the
spot
launcher is
per
different.
app. Yeah.
Right.
And you can't use the Google Now launcher. Because of software, there's additional overhead when you try to invoke Google Now. I mean, even my Qbot with its quad ARM Cortex A53s is faster at activating Google Now than the Mate 8 is. It's crazy.
That sounds like a weird bug.
I've been told that some of my issues have been fixed, except that because I'm using a review sample, my EMUI version doesn't update automatically. I have to actually go provide the IMEI number to Huawei to get it to update. So some of my issues may have been fixed. But I did ask Huawei, are you ever going to launch a non-EMUI device just with, stock Android or whatever you want like that? And they said no.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, because they want to differentiate.
Yep. But I told them that, okay, with so many devices trying to differentiate now, you've only got 30 seconds to try and capture the imagination of whoever's going to buy it. And you have 100 different features on your phone. A, what's the best feature you're going to show them? And B, how many features actually go unused during the lifespan of the device? Things like, Huawei does light painting with their cameras now, where it's just like a long exposure with amped up contrast and brightness. I suspect it's a lot more clever than that, but...
Yeah, so, I mean, features like that, I don't think I really use it, but,
Well, no, the problem is us as reviewers trying to explain the feature. Because, I mean, this isn't necessarily an EMUI thing, this isn't necessarily an Honor thing, but I will use a device for 6 months and still find new stuff I've never done with it before, and I may only ever use it once. This is a quintessential problem with smartphones as a whole, rather than...
Yeah. My problem is that I forget the features there, so, like, on the iPhone with the force-sensitive display, like, I use one gesture for the switching apps all the time, but I completely forget that you can, press on an icon and get the quick
I think,
shortcut
but that stuff is like
so
way too ingrained in your muscle memory, right? Like, just immediately tap and then get into the next app as soon as you press the home button or, switch. But I still, like the stuff like if you press down on the keyboard, it becomes a trackpad. That's pretty awesome. I still like that a lot.
Oh yeah, that's
okay. Moving back on topic. After little rants. The Honor 8. It's a $400 device, and the P9 and the Mate 8 are what, $499, $549. So this
it's like $550, something like that.
So this is a cheaper Kirin 950 high spec device. Which color did you get, Josh?
We got the blue.
That blue, I really like that blue. That electric blue.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
One of my favorite colors is electric blue, and that is the nice electric blue I like to see.
It's like Focus blue. RS blue.
Yeah, pretty much. Unfortunately, I don't think the design the design idea of the device is very typical Huawei. Can't get around that. But the rear is so flat. I'm not sure whether it's trying to be iPhone-like or not. I'm so used these days to having my devices have a slightly curved rear so they fit well in the hand. So it feels good in the hand. I know, the Honor 8 to me doesn't feel that great in the hand.
It caught you off guard?
I don't know, it just didn't, I felt like if it had a slightly curved rear, I would like it more.
I don't think you can really do that with glass. I mean, you can curve the edges, but it's not a constant radius curve,
maybe the problem is the glass.
Yeah. But I'm mostly used to that because I have to review so many phones with glass backs.
Yeah.
I think the Galaxy S6 was especially brick-like, but other than that, I haven't had a ton of issues with glass-backed phones. I think stuff like the Honor 8's okay. But it does slide off of every table you set it on. Seriously, it's actively... It tries to fall to its death, basically.
Yeah, for me, I was just going to say that my hands are so big that the palm of my hand never touches the back of the phone anyway.
I'm a small guy, and I have that issue with the Honor 8. That's why I prefer a slightly curved rear.
Okay.
But yeah, so with Honor 8, with Honor moving more into the sort of mid-high range, Huawei is moving into the mid-low range with their new Nova brand, which they announced at IFA last week. I think
that was the 6P design, right?
Yeah, it was. I'm not going to go into everything about the Nova and the Nova Plus. They actually gave me a couple of. They gave me one of each for testing. I'm not sure if we'll ever get around to it just because of our workloads recently. But yeah, it's the fact that Honor are moving higher and Huawei are moving lower draws a very distinct parallel to anybody that follows the motherboard industry on the PC side, because Asus used ASRock as their low budget brand motherboards, and eventually they span out into separate companies such that now Asus and ASRock both compete at the same price points for the same markets. So, I don't know, projection in a few years, Honor is going to spin out as a separate company from Huawei, and they're going to both be doing high, medium, and low range phones.
You heard it here first.
I don't know, because Huawei is so vertically integrated, that may be less of an issue. That may be, I don't know. It depends if Honor have a recognizable brand ID in certain markets to which Huawei doesn't. And if millennials is that market, then that's what they're going to target. So, I don't know.
It's similar to what the auto industry did, like with Toyota. They've got their premium brand. Do they do? I forget.
Yeah, Lexus, and then they have their youth brand called Scion.
So they do Lexus, it's premium, right? Then there's Toyota proper, and then there's Scion for the youth-oriented market. So it seems like Huawei's kind of going.
Scion doesn't really exist in Europe, so.
Yeah, actually, I think in Japan it's just all Toyota. But I guess there's also Lexus now. They actually introduced Lexus to Japan.
Well, the LFA.
Yes. That V10.
So, moving on from the Honor 8.
The V20. Perfect segue.
from cars into phones with valves and 20 pistons. No, okay, yes. So LG V20. This launched the day before iPhone.
Yes.
You were there. You got to see. Now the big thing with the LG V10 and V20 is the fact that there's not one screen, there's two screens.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, and actually it's a pretty nice feature, actually. I think it's more functional than the Edge display. So,
the dual screen, it works by having your standard 5.7 inch Quad HD display in your phone, but then above that, there's another, I've got it listed down here as a 2.1 inch 160 by 1040 LCD. Is it actually a proper LCD with actual useful and utility, or is it just? Because I remember the early V10, it was kind of meh.
So it actually functions as quick settings, notifications, right? So the notification icon will pop up in the notification drawer, but the full notification will read out in the second display. So you don't have to open the notification drawer to get to it. And then if you swipe on the screen, actually I have it right here right now. If you swipe on the screen over at the second screen, you also get quick settings, and you can set like a flashlight, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, that kind of thing. There's also like quick access for apps. I'm not sure if you can toggle it, but you can like easily access settings, that kind of thing. So I think it's pretty cool. Is it like game changing? I don't know. I'm not so sure about that, but it's a nice feature.
It's a product differentiator.
Yeah, I think it is. Honestly, though, I think this is what the G5 should have been. Like, maybe make this smaller, but I think this is what it should have been.
Well, the V20 from a spec-wise, we're talking about Snapdragon 820 again, 4GB DRAM, 64GB storage using UFS 2.0.
Actually,
display.
it's UFS 2.1.
What's the difference?
I'm not sure. I think it's some kind of security thing, but so I have a pre-production unit in front of me right now, and when I check the storage solution, it's an SK Hynix, so it's no longer Samsung, like it was for the G5, and it's using 3D NAND.
Okay, so that would be slightly more expensive. I mean, is it a POP?
It's a BGA. So generally NAND is not popped with the SoC. Memory is, but the NAND is a separate die.
Okay. So UFS 2.1, using SK Hynix. The displays we've gone over. V20 is another dual camera smartphone.
Yeah.
Explain the dual cameras on this one.
So it's like the G5 in the sense that, unlike the 7 Plus where you get better zoom, you get wider field of view, like even wider than before. So it's like the opposite of zoom, I guess.
So you have wide angle and super wide
exactly.
angle.
It's wide and wider. I think actually the camera's changed. I think it's IMX298 and IMX219 now.
Yep, two different sensors, same resolution.
I think it's same res, different sensors. And the battery is removable, and it still has like an aluminum back cover. I think it's implemented very well here. The G5 was a little bit less so because of the modular thing. This works great. I like it.
Does it still work like the G5?
It's sort of so you still press a button, but instead of like the whole bottom of the phone sliding out, you have a very thin aluminum back cover that flips out, and then it sort of just reveals the entire phone.
Oh, so the whole back cover is removable.
Right. So it's sort of more like the HTC Sensation than the G5. But even the Sensation is not quite right because it's not the whole cover of the phone that comes off, it's just the metal part.
And it's not using the LG G5's modular.
Right, so the modular system goes away.
Maybe that's going to be kept for G6 or whatever.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that's going to be exclusive to the G line or if they're just abandoning it entirely.
You know, honestly, maybe LG will change my mind next generation if they stick to it, but if the G5 is what we can expect, I think it's probably best to go with sort of the V20 route of removable battery but not modular.
Well, battery capacity I've got listed down as 3200 milliamp hours.
Right, 12.3 watt hours. It's pretty respectable.
Despite the fact it's got two displays to power.
Right, so I think maybe the efficiency, the volumetric efficiency is not as good as the Note 7, right? That's sort of the price you pay for a removable battery, but it's still pretty respectable. It should be okay.
This is another device that we've talked about today with USB Type-C.
Yes.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm glad that Type-C is being adopted.
Dude, it's awesome.
Despite the fact that it's USB 2.0 Type-C.
Is it? I'm not sure, actually.
That's what we had it listed down. But I've seen a number of devices, Type-C, but USB 2.0 speeds. Maybe it's not such a big as issue as I think it should.
Yeah, see, the big problem right now is that, like, everything is shipping with USB 2.0 cables anyways, so you can't even use the feature if the controller supports it. Like, yeah, the Note 7 and the HTC 10 are prime examples here.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I've actually replaced all my micro USB cables with reversible micro USB cables, which is a thing, and you can get the cables for less than $10 on Amazon.
Did they work well?
Yeah. I mean, I only
nice.
use them to charge. I've never used them to transfer data over. But it means that I don't have to faff around trying to stick them in.
Right.
But yeah, so one of the other things with the V20 is that it's the first device with Android 7, with Android Nougat. I've not used it. Tell me about it.
It's faster, but I think Android N is not necessarily a huge upgrade from Android M. Like, it's really subtle stuff that they're improving here. So like stuff like OTA updates no longer take forever and destroy your battery. Updates from the Play Store no longer take forever. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think one of the big things was the security enhancements too, which you're not necessarily going to see.
Right, exactly. So you're not going to see, like, that's stuff that's sort of beneath the surface. It's sort of like, you know, you don't even realize that Google is changing things, and I guess maybe that's for the best, right?
Are we going to come out with the Android 7 review?
I'm not actually sure yet.
We'll see. We'll have to see if we get enough time to cover that between all the devices that we have as well.
Yeah, it's getting crazy in here. It kind of fits because I'm a little crazy, right?
A little? We'll leave that up to listeners to decide.
Yes.
On the V20, I noticed on our list of things to discuss, you've pointed out video recording features.
Yes, dude. This thing has like the craziest video application. Like, I don't really think anybody else has done this. I think the V20 had this, but not anything else. So there's the ability to do you can set the gain, you can set the directivity, like you can sort of like adjust the stereo effect, you can turn wind noise on and off. You can set like sort of a lower bound for sounds to pass through, right? So like really quiet background noise can get filtered out. You can also do like, below a certain frequency, just cut all these frequencies. You can set the frequency response of the microphones for video recording. You can set like, so you can set, in addition to resolution, you can set the bit rate. You can also set white balance, focus, exposure compensation, sensor gain, and integration time. And you can also adjust sort of like whether you want it to be locked to specific exposure settings or if you want it to automatically compensate. There's like histograms for sort of metering the scene, like all kinds of, like, it's seriously the most comprehensive manual camera application I've ever seen. Like, LG should put this in everything. It's great.
Yeah, it's like the videographer's phone.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it's awesome.
And you're absolutely sure that what you've got there on your pre-production is going to be what's out?
Yeah, I mean, because they've already done most of this in the V10 before, right? But
right.
Like, I just didn't have any. That was a much lower key launch, I think. Like, I didn't even go to a launch event or anything, and the phone, you know, like, it just sort of showed up on the market.
I was just going to say, video is definitely the big differentiator for the V line. And the flip side of that is that they specifically neutered video recording on the G line. So the G5,
yeah, that's bad.
The video recording is basically no better than a low mid-range phone. It basically sucks.
Yeah, I think that kind of artificial differentiation is a problem.
Yeah. I mean, they've deliberately held back the G5.
Well, Matt, aren't you testing out some Hasselblad video camera?
Yes, for the Motorola Moto Z.
Yeah. Isn't
that the Hasselblad True Zoom camera module?
That doesn't have any sort of advanced video recording features like this?
No, that is its claim to fame is its 10x optical zoom.
Right.
But it still uses a smartphone camera sensor
and software.
And the software is still the same feature set as what you get on the regular Moto Z. But obviously you get that 10x optical zoom, which does make a huge difference.
You see, with the V20, with all the filter and advanced video features.
There's also like really good audio. There's that whole quad DAC thing.
Oh, quad DAC. What do you mean by that?
So when they say quad DAC, I think what they really meant was we integrate the features from 4 other sort of codecs that they have into one. So it's like super high end, I guess.
But I assume this is not all done in fixed function. Some of it is done in programmable shaders or something.
I mean, a lot of this is just analog hardware.
Okay,
right?
it's on the analog side. Because...
So that's sort of like a dark art.
Well, when you've got all these filters in the video application, dealing with high pass and low band and what have you, I assume this is all done on the digital side, not the analog side.
Right, so audio processing is digital side, right? You do a DSP, but a lot of this stuff is like, sort of like how cleanly can you transmit the signal, right? What is your output voltage on 3.5? I think they claim 2 volts, which is really high. Like this is going to drive really high impedance headphones. And also stuff like really high dynamic range, really high signal to noise ratio. This is all analog side. And I think that's really what matters here. They advertise like 32-bit, whatever. That's pointless. You only need like 16, 24 if you really want to push it. 32 is kind of just a marketing gimmick. But I think everything else, like this is still a really good audio device.
I'm just surprised at how much of this could easily be implemented on other devices, especially everything on the digital side. The last thing on our list of things to talk about in this half of the podcast is LiveBlog Adventures.
Yeah, so the V20 event, that was an interesting experiment.
Is this based off what I showed you on the Honor 8 event?
Yes, and so I decided to take that to its logical conclusion, which was let's bring a 13-inch iPad and just LiveBlog with that for everything. Not just text, photos too. So everything.
So I would like to put a bit of history here. So when we do a LiveBlog at AnandTech, historically we typically have 2 people on site. One writing directly into our content system, and another person taking photos, typically with a DSLR, sometimes with tethered capture, sometimes not. So tethered capture puts the file directly into the system, the PC, the laptop that we're using. It then goes through some very minor, color adjustments, and then it gets uploaded. And that's all essentially a manual process. Now at the top of the year, I started using my smartphone to take the pictures, because the way our content system works is we can instantly say, okay, let's take a picture of what's being shown, and it will instantly get uploaded. And depending on the Wi-Fi signal at the event or our data plan, we can just stick in a 6 megapixel picture and it goes straight into our LiveBlog. Now, back at Mobile World Congress in February, I actually did one full LiveBlog with just my smartphone. That was the Sony press event, and I did that fully on a Nexus 6P. However, it was fairly easy to do on a 6P at the time because they weren't announcing anything. It's very easy to do a LiveBlog when nothing gets announced. But typically the idea is that we have 2 people at once doing the LiveBlog, one in pictures, one on text. And when you've got one person, it's very hard to do the whole thing, both of those together.
Quite.
But you took your iPad Pro to do both text and pictures.
Yes. What are the lessons learned? The lessons learned are it's still incredibly obnoxious to take photos with an iPad, especially a 13-inch one.
Wait, it's obnoxious people watching you do it, or you actually doing it?
Like, when I take the photo, cause like some poor guy is behind me, and they're trying to follow the presentation too, and suddenly this giant display is blocking their face, okay? And also the camera's not even that good, right?
Well,
the iPad Pro 13, it's like an 8 megapixel shared with the iPad Air 2, so it's not going to be amazing.
One of the things when doing pictures with a smartphone for a live blog is that I have to make sure I have a good seat.
Yeah, that's true, because it's a very wide-angle lens, so you gotta get close. And the other thing I discovered was, while text worked great, right, because I can type as fast as I do with a Razer Blade that I, for some reason, am still using, when I'm typing, and actually for typing I think it's better because there's no trackpad, I can hold it closer to me, and it's more stable on my lap than a laptop in that regard. Even though I don't think they actually say you should try that, but I do it anyways because clearly I'm a rebel.
For me, with the LiveBlog, I still need a laptop with a physical keyboard, just because I type faster with it.
Right. So, but the iPad Pro is basically like a laptop with a physical keyboard, right? It's that fast.
Well, okay. So I've used a 2-in-1. I've used the Huawei MateBook, and because of the stand, I can't put it on my lap properly.
Right. So the design of the smart keyboard, is that what it's called? I don't know what it's called anymore. But the keyboard cover for the iPad Pro actually stands in your lap, like, no problem. There's no, like, pressure point. It's, like, well distributed. You only get one angle. So, you know, like, you kind of have to just adapt to that angle, but it works great.
Did you have a table, or were you doing it on your lap?
No, it was all on my lap. Yeah, this is all on my lap.
Now, you see, Matt, you haven't done a live blog with us yet, have you?
No, I've sat next to you while you did one. At MWC.
Yeah,
I have not done one.
Yeah, come MWC next year, CES even, we'll get you live blogging, and you can feel the difficulty, the passion, the woe, the thrill. Yeah.
Yes.
Of like,
the ecstasy.
Yeah.
The agony and ecstasy of live blogging at AnandTech.com.
Well, when you're on your own, there's,
Yes. So what I discovered was, here's the major flaw that kills it for iOS live blogs, is it's not just like the iPad, cause then if the issue is the iPad, you take out an iPhone and it's fine. The issue is that our CMS is not adapted to uploading multiple images with the same file name. It's going to overwrite the image if you do that.
Oh,
right?
is this the issue you had?
Yes, this is the issue I had. And you can tell it's very obvious because if you actually followed the live blog, there was one photo, there would be a bunch of photos, and then they would all become the same photo, right?
Josh, is this just an iOS setting you forgot?
No, I tried multiple times. I seriously tried playing with it so many times to see if I could do something. It all comes out the same. And I think Ryan tried himself later, and he discovered the same issue.
You're gonna have to move to Android.
Yeah. So that's actually exactly what I did for the Apple event, was I moved to the HTC 10, which worked pretty well, but what I ended up having to do was, because Apple and so many other people, they seem to love, like, we're gonna have this really black background, and then we're gonna have really bright white text. So I ended up having to do manual EV compensation to like -2.5 or something like that most of the time, to get it to meter properly, because otherwise it wouldn't even focus properly with contrast, right? Because everything is blown out.
Well, it's funny how the equipment that we take to these shows has evolved over the years. I mean,
Dude, it's all mobile now.
I no longer take a DSLR to shows, not only because my DSLR broke last year.
I think that's a pretty compelling reason, right?
So I just went, hey, can I now do it fully with a smartphone? And the answer is 95% of it, yes. The 5% I don't get are if I'm turning up to an event late, so I can't really get any images from the back, or I'm at a stand and I want a really, really detailed, high-resolution picture to be able to, go off later and, detect the right ICs. Yeah. I can't do it for that. So I think at the AMD event during Intel's developer forum, separate to the Intel event, they had a motherboard on display, and I couldn't really take that great pictures with a smartphone. But Ryan had his DSLR, so we used that instead. But still, for 95% of my photo taking, smartphone does it fine. A high-end smartphone.
Right, yeah, you don't want to use like Nexus 5 necessarily.
Yeah.
Or Nexus 4.
We haven't touched on video taking that much yet. I don't know how that's going to evolve on AnandTech, but we may need better audio equipment.
I think really to launch videos on AnandTech, what we really need is like my face as much as possible. Maybe like Anand's face. I don't know. I think Anand's face would help, but I'm not sure he can help anymore.
Yeah, well, Josh, I think if we have a YouTube channel, I think we should get you presenting some of the videos.
Yes, definitely.
We get Matt on there.
It'll be great.
So I'm going to wrap up this part of the live blog here. We've focused mostly on smartphones. We've still got things like IFA and the PlayStation 4 announcements to cover. I'll probably go through those with Ryan later this week if I can. But thank you guys for being here, for talking about smartphones and everything to do with Apple and Honor and LG and Galaxy. And I think we're done with smartphones for a little while now. Q1?
Yes.
I think Q1 is going to be back up.
Right. So once we get into the holidays, everyone kind of cools off, and but as soon as the new year hits, we're back in the swing of things.
Yeah, on the PC side, it's going to be tough as well. Yeah, but thanks, guys, and thanks to everybody who's been listening. Stay tuned for the next podcast. Thank you.